There is a kind of vision, a characteristic of the mind that is never acquired in a seminar, is not cultivated in a social circle, nor does it manifest when life is going your way. It is a way of seeing through the world like an X-ray that only emerges when you are finally alone with your own mind. And it is vital to understand this. It is not a comfortable quality. It is not pleasant. It won't make you popular, nor will it win you easy affection. On the contrary, it makes you an uncomfortable figure, a relentless observer, and someone impossible to fool with the usual superficiality. The Mexican mystic Jacobo Grinberg, in his studies of consciousness, said that all stagnant energy becomes corrupted. Life only thrives when something moves. Your breathing, your blood, your emotions, your thoughts, and yes, also the knowledge that keeps you stagnant. Today we are moving the energy of your perception. On the other hand, Niccolo Machiavelli, the cunning Florentine thinker, did not see solitude as simply a lack of people. For him, true solitude is a state of mind. It's that turning point where the need for external validation fades away, where you stop seeking approval as if it were oxygen, and where your opinions no longer fit the mold of what you're supposed to say. Authentic solitude begins the moment you stop needing to be accepted. And that's where this trait, which we'll talk about today, appears, not as a calm choice, but as an irreversible consequence. When you're immersed in company, you take part in the great human theater. You adapt, you soften, you put up with a lot, you accept ideas you hate just to maintain that illusory harmony. The vast majority live in this cycle, programmed to please instead of understand, to belong instead of seeing clearly. But when the stage is empty and you face your own silence, there's no one left to convince, no one to depend on emotionally, and no one to fear disappointing. And that emptiness creates something truly dangerous: total honesty with yourself. Machiavelli understood a truth that remains uncomfortable for modern humanity. People are not mainly driven by some ethereal goodness. They are driven by self-interest, by fear, or by expediency. The difference is that when we are surrounded, we need to believe that this isn't true in order to live together in peace. You need to believe in pure nobility, in clean intentions, in selfless purpose. But when you're alone, the mask falls and you start to notice subtle patterns that used to seem invisible to you. You start to notice that many grand words come with a price, that affection is sometimes conditional, that favors are rarely altruistic, and that loyalty is not always a noble virtue. Sometimes it's just a clever calculation. And this revelation doesn't come to you with the sweetness of an epiphany. It hits you like an uncomfortable truth that keeps you up at night. The distinguishing feature of people who embrace this solitude is this: they develop a brutal clarity about human nature. They don't waste time idealizing. They don't allow themselves to romanticize situations. And above all, they don't deceive themselves. They simply observe, analyze, and dismantle facades. And that automatically makes them different. Not superior in a vain spiritual sense, but superior in reading the world strategically. Because while most people react emotionally, they interpret. While others go with the flow, they anticipate. While the world trusts blindly, they look and then look again. If you feel that this truth is hitting close to home, it's because your mind is already asking for this level of awareness. Subscribe right now so we can keep exploring these hidden dynamics of reality and power together. Click don't miss the next part of this awakening. Now, Machiavelli argued that those who see human beings as they really are stop being surprised. And that's the exact effect when you're alone. Not only that, automatically, when someone betrays you, you're not outraged. And you're not shocked when someone lies. And you don't fall into a total depression when someone important disappears. And it's not because it doesn't affect you, it's because deep down, you expected it. Naivety quickly disappears when you don't have a group to validate your fantasies to keep them going. You're forced to confront reality without any anesthesia, and that's a brutal education. You start to see with painful precision how people's personalities change radically when they gain power, and how they become unrecognizable when they lose it, how they talk about unbreakable values only when it suits them, and abandon them without hesitation as soon as those values get in their way. And this constant, undistracted observation sharpens your mind irreversibly. Machiavelli never tried to describe human nature as something beautiful. He treated it as a mechanism, a tool, a predictable structure, a system that responds to clear stimuli: fear, desire, self-interest. The solitary man learns this by heart. He learns that human beings are not absolute chaos. They are, in fact, patterns that repeat themselves, only with different faces and disguises. When you assimilate this truth, a silent miracle happens. You stop taking everything personally. You no longer feel that every betrayal defines you, nor do you think that every absence is necessarily your fault. You understand that most people simply act according to what serves them best at that moment. And that understanding, even though it doesn't comfort you in the moment, does set you free. There's a dark freedom in no longer expecting too much from others. The loner learns not to give themselves away too much. They learn to measure their steps, not to idealize too quickly, and, crucially, not to give up their emotional power easily. In a world where most people live for social approval, that independence becomes an invisible force that radiates respect. Machiavelli claimed that those who need to be loved will always be weak because they will give anything not to lose that affection. And that makes him easy to manipulate, docile, and predictable. The loner breaks this pattern. He has already survived without applause. He has already learned to exist without witnesses, and that makes him dangerously free. He doesn't seek to please. He doesn't adapt his identity for emotional crumbs, nor does he negotiate his judgment just to belong to a group. And this inevitably scares people. Comfortable and dependent people instinctively distrust those who don't need their validation. The loner becomes a strange figure because he no longer responds to collective emotional blackmail. This brings us to a key distinction. Loneliness doesn't make just anyone wise. It only makes wise those who are able to endure without running away from themselves. Many people are physically alone, but their minds are full of noise, social media, voices, distractions, constant stimuli. They never develop this clarity because they never truly sit alone with their own mind. But whoever faces silence faces a raw version of themselves. Fears, anger, doubts. And if he doesn't run away, if he doesn't numb the pain, if he doesn't get distracted, something changes in the deep structure of his being. You start to think differently, to observe differently, to understand differently, and that's where the trait becomes firmly established. The mind stops being purely emotional and becomes strategic. We no longer react impulsively, now we respond. You no longer explode, now you calculate. You no longer idealize, now you weigh consequences. This doesn't make you cruel, it makes you aware. It turns you into someone who sees the whole board, while others only look at the piece they have in their hand. And here is the price to pay, the subtle tear that comes with this vision. This clarity doesn't come with automatic happiness. It comes with distance. You start to feel out of place in trivial conversations, incomplete in superficial relationships, and radically disconnected from those who still live with childish illusions. It's not arrogance, it's just that simply you can't unsee what you've seen. The solitary person, over time, starts to feel surrounded by theater, by impostures and forced appearances, and not out of hatred for people, but because constant observation destroys the fantasy. This is the powerful force of solitude. It's not gentle introspection or spiritual romanticism. It's the ability to see the world without emotional masks, an ability that isn't taught in universities, but is earned by surviving silence. Getting to where the truth doesn't break you already sets you apart from most people. Very few have the mental strength to handle this kind of verdict without retreating to the noise. But if you're here, you do. Once you survive the silence and that clarity settles into your way of thinking, something changes inside you in an almost imperceptible way. You no longer observe from naive curiosity, but from a calculated distance. You no longer look hoping to be thrilled or disappointed. You look hoping to understand. And this difference is vast, because it transforms how you interpret every gesture, every promise, every overreaction, every awkward silence. The mind becomes colder, not because of a cruel choice, but because it no longer needs fantasies to stay afloat. This way, you start to notice that many people speak passionately about freedom while living tied to the fear of being left out. That they defend noble ideas only until it costs them something personal. That they preach principles they abandon as soon as there's something at stake that matters more to them than their own words. This view doesn't come from irrational distrust. It comes from constantly comparing what is said with what is done. And when that contrast happens too many times, it stops surprising you and becomes your natural way of seeing things. You no longer buy into what people say as a whole. You believe in fragments of behavior, in disguised inconsistencies, in small decisions that reveal more than any grandiose promise. And this ability makes the solitary person extremely difficult to manipulate, because they're no longer dazzled by beautiful words or get lost in convenient narratives. We could say that the solitary person develops a kind of emotional smoke detector. You don't believe it until you see the fire. And most people, believe me, are just selling incense. The solitary gaze also changes your relationship with power. You stop seeing it as something distant and elitist. You start to understand it as an energy that moves beneath all human interactions. In every conversation, in every favor, in every emotional exchange. Because power doesn't always shout. Often, it whispers. It hides in the most harmless looking person, the most helpful one, the one smiling the most. The solitary person quickly learns that the one who smiles the most isn't always the one who can hurt the least, and that the one who appears fragile isn't always the victim. And this discovery doesn't make you cynical on a whim. Experience makes you cautious. It leads you to move more carefully, to trust more slowly, to give less of yourself to those who show little, not out of pride, but out of clarity. This clarity, however, often confronts us with truths that are hard to digest. Solitude forces us into self-observation, but that solitude doesn't have to be silent. We need guides, mentors, and perspectives to help us process the harshness of reality. That's why, if you're on this path to forging a deeper, more strategic mind, I recommend the knowledge you can find on Audible. Audible allows you to access thousands of audiobooks on history, philosophy, personal growth, and the human psyche, filling your silence with the voice of great thinkers. Turn your time of introspection into a time of internalization. If you want to take the first step toward building a mind that doesn't need to depend on others, you can start today with a free 30-day trial. Just click on the link in the description. Use that time so that solitude isn't a punishment, but the forge of your knowledge. Here, another silent and powerful effect appears. The development of emotional autonomy, which deeply unsettles those who depend on external validation. The solitary person learns to stand on their own without applause, to exist without that constant social reflection, and to validate themselves without witnesses. And that makes them unpredictable because they no longer respond to the usual reward system of society. They don't need to please. They are not afraid to disappoint. They don't act just to be liked. And when someone doesn't act from that place of dependence, most people don't know how to classify them or how to deal with them. Machiavelli understood this clearly. Someone who doesn't need to be loved has an advantage that few recognize. not because he despises genuine affection, but because he doesn't depend on it to decide his path. That independence is reflected in every choice. While others measure their words to avoid upsetting the group, he measures the real consequences. While others soften truths to avoid losing an empty closeness, he allows himself to be clear even if it temporarily isolates him. That's when distance grows between the one who still believes in the story and the one who's seen too much. That distance, mind you, is not always a physical isolation. Often it's an inner disconnect. It's being in a crowded room, feeling like the conversations don't feel like yours, like the laughter doesn't quite reach you. It's being surrounded. But emotionally, on another level, it's not contempt, it's exhaustion, it's not arrogance, it's disillusionment. And little by little, you discover that you prefer honest solitude to fake company, clean silence to superficial conversation. This clarity, however, has a double function. It not only changes how you see others, but also transforms how you see yourself. It reveals your own mechanisms to you, defense mechanisms, your attempts at control, your strategic silences, and it forces you to accept that you are not innocent in the human game either. The solitary person who truly awakens does not consider himself pure. He considers himself lucid, and that difference is essential. Lucidity does not cloak itself in moral superiority. It is based on personal responsibility. You start to notice when you use words to protect yourself, when you smile to avoid starting a conflict, when you stay silent out of pure convenience. And this self-observation can be more uncomfortable than the kind you direct at others. No one likes to face their own capacity for manipulation, their little internal strategies, the way they've so often done exactly what they hated to see in others. But loneliness doesn't give you permission to run away from that. Loneliness forces you to see yourself without any makeup. And here is the toughest test of this characteristic: to maintain lucidity without turning it into contempt. It's very easy to fall into absolute cynicism, thinking that everything is fake, that no one is worth anything, that everything is an endless farce. That's the hidden danger. To believe that understanding is the same as despising, when in reality understanding is accepting without idealizing. The loner who doesn't learn this distinction runs the risk of becoming what he criticizes, someone cold. Not out of clarity, but because of an emotional exhaustion that has emptied him inside. Machiavelli spoke of fear as a more constant force than love, not because he promoted cruelty, but because he observed the stability of human reaction in the face of threat. And the solitary person in silence comes to a similar conclusion, that most human decisions are born more from what we fear losing than from what we wish to build. This understanding changes the very basis of how you interpret the actions of others. You now focus less on what they say and more on what they fear, because fear, ironically, reveals much more than any carefully crafted speech. When you start thinking this way, you begin to anticipate without needing to guess, to understand without needing to ask, to read without needing to confront. Not because you have magical powers, but because you have learned to identify the engine that drives almost everyone beneath the visible surface. Fear of not being enough, fear of losing status, fear of being alone, fear of not being recognized. And by understanding that, your own path changes. You start to see that most people are running without knowing where they're going, chasing themselves in an endless race for validation and approval. And you, from a distance, can no longer run the same way, because you know that race is never won. It just goes on until the end. Exhaustion. The solitary person stops moving to the rhythm of the noise because he understands the invisible cost of continuing to dance to music he didn't choose. It's as if the solitary person had a mental sign that said, "I'm sorry, I've already seen the end of this movie, and it doesn't end well if I follow the script." That understanding doesn't make you an enemy of the world, it makes you a stranger within it. And that's a profound difference. You don't seek to destroy it, but you can't pretend you belong to it either. The world walks beside you, not with you. It speaks around you, not to you. And little by little, you understand that your way of being in it will always be different. The characteristic of solitary people is not just looking outward. It's developing a mental structure that doesn't need embellishments to sustain itself. A mind that no longer depends on comfortable stories. An awareness that can sit with unpleasant truths without collapsing. That is a silent strength that changes forever the way you live, choose, and observe. If you've made it to this point in the video, it's because you have the strength to hold on to uncomfortable truths. That already makes you part of a tiny percentage of humanity that dares to see without blinking. Congratulations on your commitment. Prove it. Show your commitment with this powerful phrase. Comment, "I choose to wake up." If you're still here, silently congratulate yourself. This irreversible way of seeing isn't harshness, it's depth. And if it's congratulations, then it's also for your commitment. Getting this far doesn't automatically make you a better person. It just makes you prove it. And with awareness comes a responsibility that not everyone takes on. Deciding how committed you will be to everything you now see. Deciding what to do with everything you now see. Understanding human nature doesn't force you to become a cruel version of it, but it does confront you with a silent fork in the road. Option A, use that understanding to protect yourself and build with clarity. Option B, use that understanding to manipulate coldly, or to empty yourself inside, excusing yourself by saying that's how the world is. Solitude trains you to look without illusions, but it doesn't automatically teach you how to live with what you discover. That's why this trait isn't dangerous because of what it reveals, but because of what it can do to you if you don't learn to control it. But there is that other path, the harder, quieter one. Use that clarity to understand without justifying, to protect yourself without shutting down, and to observe without becoming what you hate. The mind of a solitary person can become a weapon or a compass, and that doesn't depend on the world. It depends on you. The same clarity that helps you detect deception can also teach you to recognize exceptions. And the same vision that showed you the raw side of human nature can make you respect its fragility instead of despising it. Understanding is not surrendering, it's taking a stand. The solitary person who understands this no longer needs to become an executioner to stop being a victim. Learn to choose with your mind awake without shutting off your heart, even if it's full of scars. That's where solitude stops being a punishment and starts becoming a stance, an inner place from which you decide, without noise, without pressure, and without theatrics. You no longer need to convince anyone of who you are. It's enough to stand on your own. And that's the true power that is born in solitude. You don't try to control people, but rather not to be controlled. You don't try to impose, but you try not to be manipulated. And you don't defeat yourself, but you don't betray yourself. If this way of looking at the world resonated with you, if you feel that solitude shaped you more than you wanted to admit, now you know. This trait is neither a gentle blessing nor an absolute curse. It's a tool that cuts both ways. It can isolate you or refine you. It can harden you or strengthen you. The question is no longer whether you have this clarity. The question is, what will you do with it? Now that you have broken the illusion of emotional dependence, the next step is to understand how to build your own mental strength. Unbreakable. That's why this video, which is appearing on the screen right now, is the direct and natural continuation of this lesson. Click here to discover the map you need to use this newly acquired clarity and build a life based on inner strength. I'll be waiting for you there. Don't leave. Keep this awakening going.